Okay, peeps, how's everybody doing? As you can see, I'm in the exact same attire as I was for our meeting. It's because it's the same day, just a few hours later. All right. So remember, we're starting a new chapter. Well, it's the same chapter. It's chapter 4, but we're now going to go into the second half of that, which is the Israelites in Egypt and the Ten Commandments and Moses and all of that. You're going to have a test on this probably early next week. I'm going to say around Tuesday for now. Say Thursday or Friday, I'll let you know for sure when that test is going to be. Okay, if anyone has any questions on this, you're more than welcome to ask a question in the comment, for the post that I put with the link for this video, or you can email me directly. Okay, any questions, I highly encourage. In fact, it's mandatory. I just have no idea of, no way of checking. But please get your notes out. I think you still have half your packet to do. And just write down the answers in your packet, okay, as we go. If you need me to send you the notes through Word or something, I could do that, but I would highly not recommend that. Then you got to keep shifting from document, from Microsoft Word or Google Docs, whatever you convert it to, back and forth from this video. And you want to just keep the screen on this video if you want to get the most out of it. Okay, so I'm going to screen share. We're going to talk about Jacob and the Israelites today. So let's try this out. How do I do this? Okay, we'll do, yes, here. All right. So we are here. A little review. As you know, that God made covenants with the patriarchs. The first is Abraham. Okay, we already talked about him. His big test was to sacrifice his only son, Isaac, which he did. He was about to, which shows incredible trust in God. Now, of course, God would never actually want that. What kind of God or person would want that? But that test, it's almost like it's not that God was trying to see if he was going to pass or not. God knew he was going to pass, right? But the reason he did this was to build more trust in Abraham. And imagine when Abraham passed that test, the trust in Abraham's heart just went down through the centuries to all of his descendants, right? And Isaac, when Isaac obeyed, even though he could have totally untied himself, that all just went right down to his descendants. So who are the descendants of Abraham and Isaac? Well, Jews and Christians, right? And so you got Christians who are, we have trust in God. We believe in one God. You have Jews who believe in one God. And actually Muslims trace their heritage back to Abraham as well. We don't have time to go into that, though, because they do not trace themselves back to Isaac. They trace themselves back to Ishmael, or back to Abraham's illegitimate son, Ishmael. If we were in class, I'd go through all that, but I can't. Okay, so sin spreads again throughout the world. God makes a covenant with Abraham. Little review. Abraham is a descendant of Shem. Remember, all the goodness or negative things go down throughout generations in the Old Testament. It still happens today, actually. Sins and good virtues do tend to travel down throughout the family lines. For example, if you have a parent who's an alcoholic, you're actually way more likely to become an alcoholic yourself. Doesn't mean you're going to be. All right, but if you have parents who, I don't know, if you have parents who are really, really patient people, you tend to be really patient yourself. So the good thing is now we have Jesus. So any sins going down through your own family line, it can stop with you. All you got to do is turn your heart to Jesus, let him in your heart, confession, and then that whatever sin's been traveling down the family line can stop right there with you. So does not mean if your parents have some kind of sin going on in your family, doesn't mean that you are doomed to the same fate at all. Okay, so I'll make of you a great nation. Trust me, Abraham does. Trust is increased when God asks Abraham to sacrifice his only son Isaac. He's ready to do it, but he doesn't. Remember, it says if Abraham's faith and Isaac's obedience get passed down to all their descendants. So who are their descendants? Well, to understand that, we got to figure out who Isaac's son is. Isaac's son, some of you guys might know that, is Jacob. All right. So Jacob's son, Isaac's son is Jacob, whose family is threatened one night by an intruder. Okay, so Jacob and his family are camped out one night, and Jacob hears an intruder coming, and he looks out to see who it is, and he goes out being a very good protector of his family. He goes out and ends up fighting this intruder. They end up wrestling all night. And he has no idea who this intruder is, but they go through this huge test where they are fighting and wrestling all night. At the end of the test, we find out that the person turned out to be an angel from God. It was not a human being, did not mean to threaten the family, but it only seemed that way. Another test from God. Why? Well, God's trying to get another quality out of Jacob. He tried to get faith out of Abraham, tried to get obedience out of Isaac. It worked. Now he's trying to get something called perseverance out of Jacob, so that perseverance goes down to all Jacob's descendants as well. All right. So because of Jacob's perseverance in fighting this angel all night, he gets a new nickname. The name is Israel, which literally means he who wrestles with God. So Jacob's new name becomes Israel. That's where the nation of Israel gets its name from. All right, because they're the nation of Jacob. Every time, so Israel today is on the map right now. If you go to Israel, you can find it on the map. It literally, their nation, the Jewish people, are named after Jacob because he got the name Israel, meaning he who wrestles with God. Okay, that's the new name that the angel gives to Jacob. So Jacob's people ends up becoming called Israelites. Not quite yet. We're not there yet. All right. So Jacob ends up having 12 sons. All right. After that, and these 12 sons become the 12 tribes of Israel. You guys may have heard of them before. And there are people like Judah and Benjamin and Dan and I'm having a total brain fart right now. But there are 12 tribes of Israel. Okay. You don't need to know that yet because they haven't really broken out into their own areas yet, but just know that like Jacob's family has tons of kids, and then they have tons of kids, and they have tons of kids, and after hundreds of years they become 12 little tribes that are all kind of loosely united in their own land. Now what happens is, well, before we get there, if you look down at the bottom, the Israelites, or you can call them the Hebrews, okay, have become their own people now. Once Jacob has tons of kids and his family becomes larger and larger and larger, they now become like their own little mini, you can call them like their own tribe with 12 little mini tribes in that tribe, okay, but their own people now. And guess what? They've all inherited, you guessed it, Abraham's faith, Isaac's obedience, and Jacob's perseverance. Weirdly enough, guys, Christians, we trace our heritage back to Jews as well. Right? Jesus was Jewish. And so crazy part about this is Christians get these three traits too. Abraham's faith, think about it. You believe in a God you can't see. To most of the world, that doesn't make sense, right? But something inside tells you, you get a little feeling telling you to believe in God, that it's good to believe in God and that he's probably there. And then you look at all the reasons, of course he's there, right? I mean, that doesn't make any sense to other people, right? Why would you believe in some dude you can't even see? Well, he's not a dude. He's in you. He's existence itself. We know a lot more than that. But it's probably because of Abraham's own faith that got sent down through the generations and ended up through Jesus to you, right? That you believe. Obedience, right? Look at the Jews today. The Jews today still obey all those 613 or 682 laws they obey. They believe in. They're still obeying God's laws to this day. That doesn't make any sense. They believe in a God they can't see like we do, and they obey 600 and some laws. Most of the laws don't make any sense to us anymore, right? They got a certain gift from Isaac, and that's obedience. We get that obedience too, but we really chalk that up to obeying the Holy Spirit and obeying the teachings of the church. And finally, Jacob's perseverance. How do you know that Jews and Christians got the gift of perseverance? Guys, the Jews have been around for like 4,000 years. They've been a little tiny chunk of the Earth's population for thousands of years, and they're still chugging away, doing their thing today. How do you know Christians got that gift? How do you know me and you got that gift? Well, the Catholic Church is the oldest institution in the world. This is not fake stuff, guys. This is real. When you guys go through hard times and your faith is, wavering, you're not real sure if you should persevere, and you do, and something says, no, dig deep, keep praying, don't give up your faith. The times we're living in right now, it's tough, right? Being at home, it gets boring. You don't want to do, you want to get back out of the house, but something says persevere, especially spiritually with your relationship with God. That's literally a gift from Jacob to you. It goes through from Jacob down through Jesus, and even more so in you because Jesus is helping you out. Okay. So, section 4, Exodus and the giving of the law. All right. So I'm just going to put it, I don't know where I'm going to put myself. I don't know if you can tell this or not, but I'm like moving my face. Whatever. Okay, section 4, the Exodus and the giving of the law. All right. So here's what happens. Jacob's sons become like a big family, but they move to Egypt, okay, because there's a famine in their own land. All right, so they pick up, they move to Egypt. Now, right now, they're just like Jacob and his sons, okay? In Egypt is where I mentioned they grow to become a big like people, like, you know, 12 separate tribes, and all of them one big united people, probably in the few thousands, probably a few thousand Israelites, that because they grow during those hundreds of years in Egypt. Now, interestingly enough, you think the Egyptians would hate the Jacob's family, but they actually don't. They don't see Jacob's family as a threat at all at first, and the Pharaoh, who's in charge of Egypt, is like okay with them being there, right? So their family grows into a people for thousands of years over the next few centuries. They become known as the Hebrews, okay? You're going to see, guys, that first they're called the Hebrews. Then when they get to Israel, they're called the Israelites. And then once they all fall apart, and we'll get into that, they become called the Jews. All right, so Hebrews, Israelites, Jews, all the same people. It's just a matter of like when they were called these things. So when they're in Egypt, they're known as the Hebrews. All right, okay. When they first arrived, the Egyptian pharaoh is totally cool with them, but then what happens? They get bigger and bigger and bigger. And a new pharaoh comes years later who does not like them. He sees them as a total threat. He hates all, he's pretty much racist. He hates all non-Egyptians living in the area. And guess what? Jacob's family, they ain't Egyptian. So what does he do? You guys might know this, but he decides to enslave them. He's afraid they're going to rebel and take over. He's afraid, so he enslaves them. And this is when they start to cry out to deliverance for God. Okay? They start to pray to God, God, we're enslaved, please free us. Now, here's what's interesting, guys. They did not know as much about God as we did. This is before Jesus. This is before the 10 Commandments. I don't know how much exactly they knew about God. Here's what we do know. They knew God was one. They knew they believed in one God. All right? They probably knew this God. They did know this God made a deal and had a relationship with their ancestors, you know, Noah and Shem and Abraham and Isaac and Jacob. They knew about that. That's and also that God cared about them and that they should sometimes trust him. Like, that's pretty much all they knew. They didn't know about, like, oh, love your neighbor. That's Jesus, right? They didn't know about the 10 Commandments. 10 Commandments haven't been given yet, right? In fact, guys, at this time, they might not have even known that there was only one God. They probably thought the Egyptian gods were also real gods, just that their God they were hoping was more powerful than the Egyptian gods. They didn't know that God, like, they were demons the Egyptians were worshiping, or they were fake, and that God's the only one. Like, they had no idea, right? They're working off just a little bit knowing about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, and going off trust, okay? So they start to call out to God for deliverance. And you can imagine they're scared. Like, is this God we believe in, this one God, even more powerful than the Egyptian gods? They didn't know, right? They probably didn't even know the Egyptian gods were demons. All right, so God does hear their prayer, and he comes in the form of this guy, Moses. All right, Moses is an average dude. He's not Jesus. He's not God, but he's a very trusting individual. We're going to get to him. This will be the last slide we do, so hang in there. Okay, so Moses, interestingly enough, is born a Hebrew. All right, he's a Hebrew. The weird thing, though, is that when at one point the Pharaoh hates the Hebrews so much that, and he feels threatened so much. I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Prince of Egypt, but he goes out of his way to try to kill all the firstborn Hebrew boys, because he's worried about them having an uprising. So they go around killing a lot of Hebrew boys, really horrible massacre. And in order to protect him, Moses' mom puts him into a basket and puts him on the Nile River. Right? So she was actually ordered to kill him. She should have killed him if she was obeying the Egyptians. She didn't. She put him in a basket, sent him to the Nile River, had his sister, Miriam, I think her name was, shadow this basket as it's floating down the Nile to make sure he's okay. And who does he get picked up by? If you guys have seen the movie or know anything about the story, you know Moses in the basket, baby Moses, is picked up by none other than the Pharaoh's own daughter. So Pharaoh's daughter, who's royal Egyptian household, right, takes care of him, okay? So he's raised, like, you know, as a son. And he probably he probably knew he was Hebrew, but didn't fully understand what that meant growing up, all right? So he was treated very well because he was treated as royalty. So what happens is Moses is he's doing his thing one day, and he sees a Egyptian soldier or a slave master really mistreating one of the Hebrew slaves. I mean, beating them or whatever. And he's really freaked out by this. In a rage, he kills the Egyptian that was mistreating this slave. This is not cool, Okay, I know God is not cool with slavery. God's not cool with the Israelites being enslaved, but he's also, remember, as we see with Cain and Abel, he's not cool with you killing people instead, right? It's only love can overcome these things. So Moses commits a gigantic sin by murdering this Egyptian. Okay, he freaks out and he runs away. He goes off to the desert. He has a family, and he kind of has a crisis where he's not sure who he is. Like, am I Hebrew? Am I Egyptian? Who am I? He runs from Egypt. He gets a family out there. Okay, he gets married and becomes a shepherd in the land of Midian. So you can write that down, Midian. Okay, he gets married to a woman named Zipporah, becomes his wife. Now he thinks he's okay out there. All right, well, he fled Egypt. He's got his new, poorer life, but he's got his new life, his new family, new relatives out there, his father-in-law and their little tribe out in the desert in Midian. But God really shakes his life up. With this virus, guys, God is shaking people's lives up. I mean, God will speak in ways you don't expect. He will come in ways you don't expect. And what you have to do is let the events of your life, let him in and let him purify you through these events and get holier through it. Thank God that's what Moses does. So Moses is tending his flock one day when God speaks to him in the form of a burning bush. All right, he's walking around. He goes into a cave, sees a bush that's on fire, but it's not melting or disintegrating. He's really, really, really like interested in this. He walks up to the bush and he hears a voice saying, Moses, Moses, take off your shoes, for the place in which you stand is holy ground. He does. He asks who it is. It says, I am the God. Well, you know what? Why don't you guys watch the video? I'm going to put a link up on YouTube to this scene from Prince of Egypt, and then we'll ask you a few questions about it, and that'll be your activity for today. Okay, guys, this was, hope you enjoyed, this little lecture, and let me know if you have any questions, and I'll give you the next one for tomorrow. And now I got to get out. I'm not sure how I'm supposed to do that. Stop sharing. Okay. Okay. Bye, guys.